Welcome to Pages and Pods. This podcast will be about the Buddha's mission to Mars as the Redeemer of the Red Planet. The Buddha's gift to humanity did not conclude when he attained Buddhahood on Earth. His role expanded beyond our planet, and he became a spiritual guide not only for humanity but also for Mars. Rudolf Steiner reveals to us a vivid image of Buddha's extended mission, guided by the Christ impulse and executed under the direction of Christian Rosenkreutz, the legendary founder of the Rosicrucian Order. In past cosmic epochs, the Buddha was initially a spiritual emissary appointed by Christ from the sun to Venus. Steiner describes how, upon Earth, Buddha fulfilled the task of becoming the enlightened one, the Buddha, in his 29th year. By completing his transformation from Bodhisattva to Buddha, he provided a pathway for spiritual enlightenment to all who would follow his teachings. After accomplishing his mission in the physical realm, the Buddha no longer reincarnates into a body. Instead, he ascended to the higher spiritual realms, his consciousness expanding beyond human comprehension. Yet, Buddha's mission for humanity was not complete. At the birth of Jesus, the spiritual Buddha announced the birth of Christ in Bethlehem and filled the baby Jesus, as described in the Gospel of Luke, with the essence of love and compassion. Christ's incarnation and crucifixion on earth, the mystery of Golgotha, initiated a fundamental awakening in the spiritual nature of humanity, which also influenced the spiritual Buddha to adapt and absorb the Christ impulse deeply within his being. Centuries later, the spiritual Buddha became a collaborator with Christian Rosenkreutz, whose role was to unite humanity's spiritual and materialistic tendencies. Rosenkreutz foresaw how humanity was developing a schism between asceticism and materialism. It was Christian Rosenkreutz who, sensing spiritual danger, persuaded the Buddha to bring his compassionate force from Earth to Mars during the 17th century. Before Buddha's arrival, Mars was in spiritual decline. In the etheric realm, it was a planetary sphere of relentless aggression dominated by powerful combative astral forces. The Martian environment was spiritually deteriorating, mirroring the spiritual decline of Earth before the arrival of Christ. Mars was reaching a critical point. Its non-physical inhabitants were steeped in conflict and required an infusion of spiritual peace. Mars's influence on Earth had been to assert courage, dynamic energy, and decisive willpower, essential to human development. But it had become deranged and was causing spiritual imbalance. Earthbound souls were becoming divided into two extremes: materialists drawn into Mars' aggressive impulses, and monastic ascetics inspired by earth-based Buddhism, disconnected from earthly reality. Once enlightened souls were reincarnated as scientific materialists. According to Rudolf Steiner, the disharmony created by Mars caused the soul of Nicholas of Cusa, a deeply spiritual and mystical philosopher. He reincarnated as Nicholas Copernicus, sparking the scientific revolution. The possibility of an irreparable polarization was imminent. You see, according to Rudolf Steiner, Mars is spiritually significant as the realm ruled by the spirits of motion, the beings who granted humanity its astral body during the old moon evolution. Mars directly influenced the human sentient soul, which mediates all sensory impressions and embodies our drives, desires, passions, and impulses. Here we find a connection with Manly P. Hall's symbolic description of Mars as the planetary source of assertiveness, vitality, and conflict. Steiner elaborates that until the 16th century, Mars was in a state of spiritual decline. This planetary descent gave rise to intense martial energies, fueling humanity's combative impulses, aggression, and materialistic inclinations, forces that eventually transformed into modern natural science. According to Rudolf Steiner, the spirits of motion, also known as the dynamis in the hierarchy of spiritual beings, are higher spiritual entities who played a crucial role during the old moon evolution, the third major planetary condition preceding our current Earth stage. In Occult Science and Outline, Steiner explains that each planetary stage is guided primarily by one of the 9 hierarchical ranks of spiritual beings. During the old moon phase, it was the spirits of motion who were the leading spiritual architects. Their central task was to bestow upon the human being the astral body, the bearer of consciousness, emotion, and sensation, thus enabling self-awareness and the foundation of inner life. The astral body endowed by the spirits of motion is intimately connected with desire, perception, and will, which later evolved into the faculties found in the sentient soul. As a result, their influence persists in shaping human development even into the Earth phase. Steiner also connects the Mars sphere with the domain of these spirits' emotions, indicating that the aggressive and willful tendencies historically linked to Mars are echoes of their powerful formative activity during the old moon stage. This links the spiritual role of Mars to the inner soul forces of humanity shaped by its astral body. Given the need to limit the breadth of this podcast, it may be helpful for us to ponder the following statement by Rudolf Steiner in his book, An Outline of Occult Science, and return to this at a later time. He wrote, "In the same way Mars is a planetary body on which dwell beings whose lunar evolution was such that further progress on the Earth could bring them nothing, Mars is a reincarnation of the old moon at a higher stage." Steiner describes Buddha's mission on Mars as a form of spiritual crucifixion, although distinct in nature from Christ's physical crucifixion on Earth. Buddha entered the hostile Martian astral atmosphere and immersed his entire spiritual essence into its turbulent and warlike currents. This act was one of profound sacrifice, selflessly undertaken by Buddha to transform Mars' aggression into compassion. Buddha became the redeemer of Mars through his spiritual Martian Golgotha. Through his sacrifice, Buddha enacted the Martian counterpart to Earth's mystery of Golgotha. Unlike Christ's physical crucifixion, Buddha's sacrifice involved no death. It was purely spiritual, an immersion into hostility that demanded complete selflessness. Buddha radiated peace, serenity, and compassion directly into Mars's astral sphere, counterbalancing the deranged martial energies. Buddha transmitted spiritual forces of moral enlightenment and peaceful coexistence to the inhabitants of Mars. Gradually, his compassionate influence began to neutralize Mars' excessive warlike tendencies. Steiner explains that Buddha's deed on Mars began an ascending development, transforming its spiritual forces from aggression towards peace, thereby altering the influence Mars exerts on human souls. Mars began its spiritual ascent, guided by the Buddha. Human souls passing through the Mars sphere between death and rebirth could now receive impulses of peace, compassion, and spiritual equilibrium, equipping them better for their future earthly incarnations. Buddha's transformative work on Mars represents an essential piece of the larger cosmic puzzle of human evolution. Steiner emphasizes the cosmic parallelisms between Buddha's redemption of Mars and Christ's redemption of Earth. Both missions were necessary, Both required immense sacrifice, and both continue to resonate deeply within humanity's spiritual evolution. The Buddha, who once enlightened humanity beneath the Bodhi tree, continues his eternal work within the spiritual sphere we call Mars. Now, here's one concluding thought. If Mars is a reincarnation of the old moon at a higher stage, then its spiritual development recapitulates and elevates the processes of the moon epoch, specifically those governed by the spirits of motion, who endowed humanity with the astral body. Since the Buddha's mission on Mars involved pacifying its aggression, it stands to reason that he is now acting as a redeemer of the astral forces at a more advanced stage of cosmic evolution. His presence there can be seen not only as resolving past karmic residue from the old moon phase, but as preparing Mars as a spiritual habitat for beings who cannot evolve further on Earth, shaping it into a more harmonious planetary sphere in line with future stages of cosmic evolution. Well, that's it. Now it's time to click on like if you gained insight from this podcast and subscribe. This encourages me to go deeper into these esoteric topics. It's good to let me know you're out there.